Today we'll be talking about Obsidian Entertainment. Yes, that same studio that helped create Fallout New Vegas. So grab a drink, get a snack, and We spawn from a briefcase having no recollection of what happened for us to get here. And as we step further to get our bearings straight, we get the horrible reality that we've been shrunken down in size and we're in our backyard. This right here is what we call a field station, and they look like the Modern Warfare 3 portable radar equipment, but right here is where we analyze different materials that we find in the yard to make different tools. After crafting my first axe, we find a really weird machine with lasers pointing to it, and we discover a cassette tape.
I am speaking to you from the backyard. I am tiny!
Looks like there's a scientist by the name of Wendell who's also tiny. But anyways, what happens if I click this button?
My bad?
We make our way to the bottom of the oak tree and find a futuristic laboratory. The lab is very nice and impressive to look at, and we even find a robot manning the science lab. This robot right here with the pride mustache is named Berg L, and he was created to help Wendell with all of his science experiments. Also, on a side note, if we go back to the explosion footage, all the purple and pink stuff that we see is called raw science, and those little bubbles are scattered around everywhere in the yard. With raw science, we can use the currency to use in the science shop to learn how to craft different materials that we've already analyzed. Anyways, the LGBT robot tells us that we need to find Wendell the scientist so that he can help us grow back to normal. But the explosion that we created made him lose all of his memory.
The explosion has disrupted my computing power. My memory banks are corrupted.
So it's up to us to go and search every lab in the yard and fetch all the super chips. This is the part of the game where I realize that everything in this game wants to kill you. It doesn't matter if it's little tiny mites, some beetles, or even some larvas. It doesn't matter, they all want to kill you. So we make our way to the Hedge Lab, which is located right next to the house. But what's this? The branches leading to the Hedge Lab are just crawling with spiders. And as we walk through the hedge branches, we spot a huge laboratory. And we can kind of understand why Wendell put his lab up here, just because you get a very nice overview of the whole yard. And then in one of the terminals, there's a loose leaf of paper that says a password, and I wonder what that could be. So we scour the humongous lab and grab all the pieces of paper scattered around the lab. And once you know, it gives us a direct access to the super chip, which kind of looks like an N64 cartridge.
How can I help you today? Huh, you made it back in one piece. Now, what is it you were wanting to know? Oh yes, the location of the other There are 4 labs throughout the yard, each with a super chip. The Hedge Lab, the Pond Lab, the Haze Lab, and the Black Ant Lab.
You know how in Minecraft you're incentivized to sleep, or else you'll have to fight a bunch of mobs that want to kill you? Well, unfortunately, here in Grounded, I found the creeper equivalent. You see, in the early game, you can kill a lot of bugs, and they're not that big of a deal, except for wolf spiders. Let me tell you, they do not mess around, because they can kill you within 3 hits, and they're very nocturnal, so they sleep during the day, and they won't bother you, but at night, you'll die eventually when you encounter them. After a couple of hours of crafting new armor and getting familiar with more survival aspects of the game, it was time to tackle the pond. I don't usually like water levels in video games, but this was kind of different because all the fauna and fauna was different than the rest of the game. I know exactly where the devs got their inspiration from. We eventually find the underwater lab door, and Wendell is working on creating a different type of Brussels sprout that tastes better and has better benefits. There's also a door that we need to unlock, and by the looks of things, there are 3 switches that we need to turn on. And once we reach the secret doorway, we find the N64 super chip. So we hand over the chip to Bergel, and also I forgot to show you my house. Alright, here it is in all of its glory. I didn't really know where to build it, so I built it right next to the briefcase spawn. I don't know, I kind of like it. It's entirely made out of grass leaves that you find scattered around the map. And as well, you got all the chests on one side, and then on the other side, you you have all the instruments in order to make other tools and stuff. Finally, I put my bed all the way to the roof so that I can fall asleep by watching the night sky. Okay, everybody, have a good night, because tomorrow we're tackling the Black Ant Lab. And as we're falling asleep, we get a horrible nightmare of a bunch of scientists making us small in a lab, forcing us into a briefcase. The anthill that we need to get to is right next to the house where all the trash bags are. We make our way to the ant nest, ready to fight. But to be completely honest, all of them were pretty cool, and they kind of acted like a dog. All they had to do was they come up to you, they sniff you, make sure that you're chill, and then they kind of just go out with their business. And after multiple dead ends in the ant colony, we finally reach the Black Ant Laboratory. But all the doors are locked, so we're gonna have to improvise with an explosive. Okay, dry grass is easy to find, but now I need to steal a red ant egg and some fungus?
Diving head first, no fear in his eyes, into the red ant world where trouble lies. Stealing a red ant egg, such a risky prize. To save the larvae before they say goodbyes. Crawl through the tunnels, feel the danger near. Heart's pounding hard, but he's got no fear. With the ant egg in hand, all will cheer. Saving the larva from the gas so clear.
As soon as we enter the lab, we're greeted with an assistant manager robot boss fight. So call me Karen, the way I always get my way. And just like that, we find the third super chip to bring to Burgell. We arm ourselves with attack masks from World War II and enter the biohazardous wasteland. Also, it's kind of cool because all the bugs you're used to killing are all zombies here, and they have different attack patterns. Once we get to the lab, the trash cans are knocked over, papers are all over the floor, with the whiteboard scribbles becoming more and more schizophrenic, and there's a bunch of beer cans lying around. In one of Wendell's drunk ramblings on a cassette tape, he explains that he wanted to make groundbreaking discoveries, but failed, and he's also dying.
The longer I'm here, the more I'm lumping up, aging, folding, raisening. But why? What am I becoming? A wrinkly virus, flailing helplessly in the dirt with the mushrooms.
Something I forgot to mention is that when you're tiny, one day is equivalent to a year as a real human. So because Wendell's been in the yard for a very long time, he's almost about to die.
Project Mant is nearing completion. The first good news in as long as I can remember. Perhaps my previous failures have all led to this point. Wendepunkt, my defining moment. This new body will allow me to continue my research. I've created a super scientist.
And unfortunately, we discover his horrifying Frankenstein creation, the Mant. Half human, half ant. He's the only boss fight between me and that final super chip. After installing the final super chip, Burgell is able to give us the coordinates to where Wendell the scientist is, and when we finally meet him, he kind of looks like straight up from Futurama. Help me! We tell Wendell about all of our nightmarish dreams that we had, and he says actually, it's not a nightmare, but it's a real kind of recollection of what happened before we became tiny. And he tells us that the company that he's working for is called Ominent, and they're experimenting on children because younger genes don't age as much when you shrink. Which is why we still look good and young, and the scientist looks like an old fart. He says that the weird machine from the intro that created the explosion, we can reverse it, but first we need to cook an ingredient with the coffee machine. So the final mission of the game is a tower defense mission, where the coffee machine electric cord has 3 raw science cores, and we need to protect it from incoming bugs. And I kept dying, or the bugs would break one of the 3 raw science core, and I would always lose. I think I tried it like 10 times. But then I remembered, I'm playing a survival game. So I just cheesed it and built a bunch of grass walls all around all the entrances. And honestly, look, it took me 2 hours to build and craft everything, but I finally beat the final mission.
I think we've done it!
We build the final piece, we send it into the machine, and then I grow back to normal. The end. A lot of the Steam reviews are gamer dads playing with their family, which I can't relate to. And then there's one guy that made a pros and cons list with no cons, which I do agree. After 30 hours of gameplay, I would give Grounded 10 raw science out of 10. Thanks again for watching. I make videos like these on other single-player games. Last week I made one on Rockstar Bully, and it was a lot of fun. So yeah, again, thanks again for watching, and I'll hopefully see you next week with another video. Alright, bye.